this is the first episode. Some people don't know who you are, Frank.
Today, we'll kind of go over my story, how my mindset started. My dad was a heroin addict. My mom was on Social Security disability. Fortunately, I did have a lot of issues with drug problems. I actually found out I was having a kid. And when I found that out, I didn't like that day quit everything. Hey, I'm not going to kind of be the father that I had, and I don't want him to have to deal with the shit that I did. I have 4 kids.
Okay.
I'm generally making 100 to 200 plus, up to the biggest spread that we created, which was a JV deal, was a $450,000 spread.
How about that for somebody who used to do a whole bunch of drugs and everything else, right?
Yeah.
This podcast is to let people know that you can do that.
Hello and welcome everyone to the first ever episode of the Phuckit podcast, where we're looking to show people if they can change their mind, they can change their life. My name is Frank McGovern, and I'm here with my co-host, Hoan.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to that first episode. This is super, super exciting because it's the beginning of a fantastic future.
Super excited.
Yeah. So, Frank, this was your brainchild. Tell us about what it is that you wanted to accomplish with creating this podcast.
Well, just with the podcast, the brand itself, I really feel like a purpose of mine in life is to help people, and I know mindset is a huge variable in people succeeding in life, and I really just want to show as many people as possible if they can change their mind, they can change their life.
All right. So, there's got to be a reason why you wanted to do this, as in what happened in your life where you figured that out.
Yeah, so today we'll kind of go over my story, but there's been many experiences I've had in life that were big mindset shifts, that I continue to have to this day. Just kind of go a little bit about how I grew up and how my mindset started. I was on welfare from birth until 18. My dad was a heroin addict. He is clean now, but he was a heroin addict my entire life. My mom was on Social Security disability, so she didn't work, and she, struggled with depression and some mental health issues. So it was just not a typical childhood to say the least, and it just shaped my mindset quite a bit in a negative way.
Got it. So let's actually fast forward. Who are you today? What would you say is some of your highlight accomplishments that you want the people listening to listen to or hear about? Because this is the first episode. Some people don't know who you are, Frank. So share with them who you are today. What is it that you're up to?
I would say that I would say number one and the proudest thing I am is I'm a father.
How many kids?
I have 4 kids.
Okay.
My oldest son, he will be 22 this year. Oldest daughter just turned 16. And then my 2 younger kids are 8, and my youngest daughter will actually be 7 tomorrow.
Gotcha. And in terms of being a father, do you find yourself being completely different than who your father was? And it's one of those situations, right? Oh, I drink because my father drank, or I don't drink because my father drank, right? So do you find yourself being exactly like him, or the exact opposite of him, or some kind of blend in between?
Definitely a blend in between. Fortunately, I never did heroin. So I that always kind of was in my mind, like although I had some pretty significant drug problems, like, hey, don't do heroin because of that. But unfortunately, I did have a lot of issues with drug problems and alcohol. So I would definitely say a blend. I can't say I was totally the opposite, but I definitely wasn't totally like him either.
Gotcha. So you were able to really clean up your act towards the later part of your life as you had other kids and raising the other kids. In the beginning, you had your kid really young, right? How old were you?
Yeah, I was 18 years old.
18 years old.
Yeah.
And at the time when you had your first kid, were you using drugs? Were you drinking alcohol? What was your life like then?
Extremely chaotic. Yeah, I was very bad on drugs. I started doing and getting, selling drugs, just selling minimally for the most part, just to kind of use. But when I was 13, 14 years old and got heavily into doing drugs up until he was born, I was doing Xanax, cocaine, smoking wet, acid, ecstasy. I like to say I was like an equal opportunity user.
Yeah.
Other than like opiates, because my dad did heroin, I was pretty open to doing just about any other drug.
Okay. And then when did you clean that all out of your system? How were you able to do that?
Yeah, and this was kind of like one of those kind of crazy moments too, because like I was such in a dark place, when I was in high school doing the drugs, I got kicked out of high school twice, And, probably about a month prior to me finding out that, my son's mom was pregnant, I had decided to take my life. I literally remember like walking home from a job that I was at. I didn't expect anybody to be there. No one was there. I grabbed 2 bottles of pills. Literally remember like walking up to my dining room, put them down, open the bottles. I walk into the kitchen, had a big ass thing of iced tea because that's what we always drank, and poured a big ass cup. Walked into the dining room, and as soon as I walked into that dining room, my mom walked into the front door, and it was just like I played it off, acted like it was nothing. Within like 2 to 4 weeks of that, I actually found out I was having a kid, and when I found that out, I didn't like that day quit everything, but it was like, hey, I'm not going to kind of be the father that I had, and I don't want him to have to deal with the shit that I did. So, he helped me straighten my shit up a lot. I believe he probably saved my life.
Yeah. Yeah. They often say that adults don't create kids, kids create adults.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that was your turning point in becoming this adult and this new version of you that we see today. Let's transition real quick. What is it that you do for business? What is it that you do as income right now?
I've been in real estate investing since 2010. Primarily, I was into residential real estate, primarily wholesaling real estate. But I've done a bunch of fix and flips. Owned some rental properties, did some development. Primarily was a wholesaler though, and within the last couple of years, I've actually transitioned more into just wholesaling larger assets. So instead of wholesaling a single family house, I will wholesale a warehouse or a storage facility, just a
Right.
larger asset.
Right. And in these larger assets, wholesaling these things, your wholesale commissions are way bigger, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like I was making, ten to $20,000 on a house, where I'm generally making 100 to 200 plus, up to the biggest spread that we created, which was a JV deal, was a $450,000 spread.
How about that for somebody who used to do a whole bunch of drugs and everything else, right?
Yeah.
$400,000 wholesale fee, that's pretty cool. And this, I think, is your point, right? Going from where you were as a drug user, as a person who maybe didn't have a future, to now you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars per deal. And this podcast is to let people know that you can do that. Could you talk about that a little bit more? Go a little deeper into that transition and how you came to this point.
That brings up another, I would say, like a big mindset shift. I've always had a very poor person's mindset just because of how I grew up, even when I kind of got into business, right? Like, for whatever reason, I just firmly believed that I was going to make it. But for the first couple of years, I still had that poor person's mindset where I can literally remember like thinking if there was like a big deal I was going to close, like I'd get that scarcity, poor mindset, like, oh shit, like the buyer's going to screw me out of the deal. The seller's not going to show up to settlement. And sure enough, that happened more in the first 2 or 3 years of my career than it did the next 10. And one of the biggest, aha moments I would say of my life was I remember I'm working a deal with this guy, Jay Walsh, who was like a turnkey. He had a turnkey real estate investment company in Philly. And, the deal started going sideways with some title issues. So I say to him, like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm going to, I'll get this done. I said, you don't even need to worry about it. I'll handle it. I'm going to get it done. I'll get it to settlement. So he's like, you must know about the secret. And I'm like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? He's like, you just said that and you don't know about the secret. I was like, Jay, like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, what secret are you talking about? He's like, hang up right now. Go Google the first 15 minutes of the secret and then call me back. So I Google the first 15 minutes of the secret, which the secret is like the law of attraction, which in essence, hey, whatever energy and thoughts that you put out, like that's what you're going to attract back. So, once I kind of like saw that, it was like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, I've been causing so many issues within my life because it was always like, anytime stuff was going good, like it was like, oh shit, like this isn't supposed to be happening. Something bad is going to happen. And sure enough, you kind of like will that stuff into existence.
Yeah.
So, like, once I kind of like learned about the law of attraction, it would just put me on like a self development mindset journey that I'm still on today. But it was definitely one of the biggest mindset shifts I've ever had in my life.
So I can tell you from personal experience and from the people that I'm running into that this self-sabotage
Yeah.
as it sounds, right? That is very prevalent. A lot of people have those thoughts. That's why a lot of people don't even get into entrepreneurship, starting businesses, because they
Fear
can
of
already
failure.
see all of the failures, right? All of the mistakes. So they never take the first step. And it's as if they were to take that first step, they would probably cause all of those fears to happen and be like, see, I told you, this is why I
Exactly.
didn't want to do it in the first place. Right. But how does one get over that? That is a huge hurdle. Like what was it that you did in order to get over that?
What I'm saying to one is just kind of being aware of it. To me, I wasn't even like conscious like of the concept of like the law of attraction and kind of me,
Yeah,
you know.
but what I mean is, like, before that, like, you're talking about the law of attraction and, like,
Well, so you're talking about more so when I took the first step to get into real estate.
well, I'm saying, like, it sounded like you were already in real estate, but you would also in your head say, like, "Oh, this deal is gonna fall apart," and
Yep.
all that kinda stuff. So how did you go from, "This deal is gonna fall apart," to now law of attraction of the positive, like, "Oh, I'll
Well, it
make it
was
okay."
literally just that conversation that I had with the guy Jay, with the buyer, like where it was like, up until that point, like the law of attraction was never even on my radar. So it was
Yeah.
just like that negativity. Well, when he brings it to my attention, not only did I watch that first 15 minutes, like I now started like just diving deep into the subject.
So when you talked to Jay, did you told him that you'll get it handled, right?
Yep.
And but what did you say to him that had him say, "Watch The Secret"? You said, I'll have it
Yeah. I
handled."
just said like, hey, like I'm gonna like I said, don't worry about it. I'm gonna get this done.
Okay, so he's seeing the positive side of you and going, "Oh, The Secret." But he didn't see the negative side of you that was the, "Oh, this is gonna fall apart." Right? So, like,
So there was, I guess, so like that was more of like not something that was like at the settlement table ready to go to settlement. It was more, a title issue came about that I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to clear.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that means the shift already happened. I'm talking about before the shift
No, but I'm
happened.
saying it didn't like the shift, like I said that, but like I still had all of that negativity.
Okay.
So like
Okay,
it
so you're
wasn't like
operating
it
this
was like,
way.
yeah, like I would say that like the majority of my conscious mind and even subconscious was like still the negativity, poor mindset. I would say that the only positive mindset I had was more when it came to the business. For whatever reason, like again, when I started into real estate, I didn't have a positive mindset, didn't know about the law of attraction, but I just knew for whatever reason, like I'm going to make this work and do whatever the fuck it takes.
Wow.
So like even though like I still had that negativity and like when big deals were, it wasn't like every transaction that I closed, like I would think it was going to fall apart, but in particular, for whatever reason, where when the ones where I was going to make more money, I would get like really fearful of that. And then it was like when I get that fear, it's like it's going to fall apart. I didn't necessarily like learn about it or consciously have the knowledge about it, but just when I saw wholesaling, it was like, honestly, I'm like, this is legal drug dealing. I won't go to prison and I'm going to do whatever the fuck I have to make it work. That was it. Like
There you
that
go.
was just
Guys, listen to that. Real estate investing, legal drug dealing.
just wholesaling, just wholesaling.
Just the wholesaling part. Okay. So what I heard was that your declaration to yourself that you're going to make this work was able to overwhelm any negativity that you had within your own head about things falling apart. So it didn't
Yeah.
matter that you had those negative thoughts. You had a declaration that you were going to make it happen regardless.
Yeah.
So that, right? That is where people can't get past. And this is, I think, part of the fundamental reason why you wanted to start this podcast, right? We're digging into it. We're finding it. People have these negative thoughts, but they're stuck. You have the same negative thoughts. And I would almost say you still have those.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And we'll
Like
get into
it's
that.
not they don't go away.
They don't go away.
No.
All right, folks. So negative thoughts, things are going to fall apart. They're not going to work out. Failure is all over the place and is almost imminent. Yet, fuck it. Let's go, right? Let's
Well,
take these
so like
actions. So let's,
so like I guess like in terms of like when it came to me being confident or just like knowing, hey, whatever the fuck it takes, I was just tired of the situation that I was kind of currently in. Like I got laid off a couple times, like as an adult. My job got outsourced. I kind of felt like I didn't have control of like my destiny working for someone else. So it was kind of like, hey, let me kind of take a risk here and figure this out. And then like once I just kind of educated myself about it, like, and I'm not even saying like, it wasn't like I spent a ton of time. It was just like, yeah, this is not, it's not rocket science. So as long as I put in the work and I don't give up, like it's going to fucking happen.
Pretty simple plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like you got to a low point, like a bottom almost,
Yeah.
right? And what you realized was the bottom can be empowering because you can't fall off the floor, right? So you're like, okay, I lost all these jobs. Like,
Yeah, and listen, and this is a part too, like that I like, haven't shared a ton with people, but like I honestly, right before I got into real estate, like I went and got like a regular 9 to 5 job, like with like Prudential. Yeah,
yeah,
regular nine to
I'm just
five
kidding. That's great.
with Prudential Insurance or something, I forget. But I remember like I went and I like I failed a drug test. Like that's literally
Surprise, surprise.
that's literally what projected me into real estate. Like if I would have passed that drug test, I would have went and got the job. It was a
Oh,
pretty
and
good
now I could have
job.
bought insurance from you.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
But I failed it, and I was fucking pissed. I remember I was like, I went and bought the shit like the detox. I was like just smoking weed at the time to clean my system, and I was like, this is just furious. And then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I said, I'm just gonna go do some real estate stuff. I said, I'll go get my real estate license, learn the business that way, and then get into fixing and flipping houses.
Yeah. All right. So this is the perfect like life happens for you, right?
Yeah,
Not to you.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know. You might have been happy selling insurance. I don't know. You could have been. You look like an insurance salesman.
I, I, that's probably the first time someone's ever said that to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I need to up my insurance being associated with you. That's probably what
Oh,
it is. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. So now you said, and let's just keep digging into this whole mindset transformation and more so life transformation because you change your life, you change
change
your
your
mind,
mind, change your
change your
life.
life, right? So you still have some of these negative thoughts that are running rampant within your head. They live in your brain rent free,
Yeah.
right? So talk about some of these. Like get some of these out into the open. What are you dealing with that I know millions of people are dealing with, but they're dealing with it silently. So what is it that you're doing?
Yeah. So like right now, I've had like just two of my best friends like pass away. One 18 months ago, one, it was like 10, 11 years ago. But that's something I struggle with.
Yeah.
I'm going through a divorce right now, which, I was with her for 17 years. So like that's like not easy to, deal with every day. So negative thoughts, it was, my good friend that passed away 18 months ago. It was his birthday last week.
Mm,
We used to spend birthdays together, so it was tough. He was on my mind a lot. Like I was just thinking about him. But especially like in the last like few months or so, whenever I get those like negative thoughts in my mind, it's about like just acknowledging them, catching them, and realizing, hey, if you can, put that thought in there, you can put like a positive one in there, right? And it's like generally I would be, that sadness kind of comes up and then I feed it. And then it's like the rest of the day or days now become sad,
oh,
where now it's more like, yeah, it sucks that like he's not going to be here anymore. But I focus and I'm grateful for the time that I did have with him, not like focused on like the time that I'm not going to have with him.
yeah, yeah. So
And
that's
it's not easy.
no, of course not. Of course not. And that's one of those like negative is natural. So you got to be positive on purpose. So the negative comes in first
Oh, yeah.
and it's the
Yeah. Like
loudest.
my natural is not positive. like, that's like, it takes work. Like I work, I put in work daily to
Right.
kind of be more positive and have, the better outlook. But it's like, yeah, it's, to me, it's like a matter of us. We all have like light and darkness in us all, right? Like the darkness is the negativity, the self-limiting beliefs.
Right.
The light is positivity, right? Some people fortunately just, have so much more light in them and others have so much more dark. But everyone, it's the yin and the yang, the
Right.
light and the dark. It's inside of us all.
Right. Well, could be argued there is no such thing as light without dark.
Exactly.
Could
No.
then just be normal, right? So, with the work that you do, right, that you put in to help yourself feel more light, what is that work? What kind of stuff do you do? Either on
Um,
a daily, weekly, whatever it
yeah,
is.
daily. Like I meditate every day, affirmations. What's been super helpful with me in particular in the last like 3 months is my diet and exercise.
Okay.
I'm 40 and feel better than I've probably ever felt before in my life, which is not easy to say given, the divorce and just some other stuff that's going on in life. But it's like, me being consistent and disciplined with my diet, me being consistent and disciplined with my exercise has, it's pretty apparent to people physically like what has changed, but the mental help it does is significantly greater in my opinion.
Right. Like you just started this exercise diet thing recently and you've lost how many pounds would you say? Or
20 pounds.
you lost 20 pounds. You probably lost like three pant sizes or whatever it is, right? Like how long have you been on doing this now? And what got you to be consistent and what got you started again? Because I think this is a big
Yeah, and this is
component.
another big,
Yeah.
mindset shift. But I'm on week 12, like literally started today.
Okay. So what's that, 3 months roughly, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yep.
Okay.
Um, and just kind of going, through the divorce, it was it made me reflect a lot. Just thinking like, don't get me wrong, I have a good life. My life today is better than what I set it out to be, when I started my entrepreneur journey. But like it was just reflecting, I realized that like I'm not where I want to be. And it's because I kind of have, not fully committed to most things in my life, my marriage in particular. And when I went to an event of my mentor, Mark Evans, there was somebody, there who's now my mentor. His name's Wes Watson, but he just really resonated with me. The guy has an incredible story, did 10 years in prison, and is now kind of killing it in coaching and in life. And the thing that resonated with me was it's like, if you're consistent and disciplined, that equals freedom. Like you can get whatever you want in life. So for me, it was like, I'm not one that was ever really in shape my entire life. I don't really like working out. I don't like eating better than I used to.
Yeah.
I don't like tracking my food, but it was like, hey, if I can be consistent and disciplined in these areas that I don't want to be, it'll be a lot easier for me to be consistent and disciplined in the areas that I actually, like more. And then as I just kind of went down this path, it made me realize that right now, and when I guess I was like 37, when I did 75 hard, I felt the best in my life. And like, what have those common denominators been? Just consistency and discipline with my diet, consistency and discipline with exercise, and, getting rid of my vice, which for me was alcohol.
Okay. Have you been sober?
Yeah, I have not drank since it's been over 9 months since last December.
Okay. Was that difficult?
Yeah, yeah, it was literally probably one of the hardest voices for me to kick in my life, and I quit taking fucking like 150 to 200 milligrams of Percocets a day, cold turkey,
Yeah.
and yeah, drinking was harder than that.
How were you drinking every day?
No, I was never one to like drink every day at all. Like I was like more like, maybe like, a couple times a week. But the days I drank, like I was making up for like the days that I wasn't
Yeah.
drinking, like it was like, all or nothing. Like
Right.
that's kind of how I usually am with most things in life. So it was like, not drink or drink to the point that you get blackout drunk and you're
Right.
usually, not at home drinking. So you're getting blackout drunk and driving home. And, that went on for consistently for like a decade.
Right, right. So when a doctor says like, maybe 2 drinks a day is safe or whatever, you're like 0 days or 0 per day and then 14 on one day,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And those 14 would be in like a 3 hour span or something.
Right, right. Nice short time frame, right. Right, right. So you said commitment, right? This is what stuck out to me. You were like you committed to it, but you didn't commit to your wife, but you were now committed to your lifestyle in terms of health and fitness. This commitment word, what does that mean to you? How does it translate in your brain when you say I was committed to this or not committed to that? Because one could say that you were committed to your wife because you married her, right? But like what is this commitment? What's the
I
differentiator?
guess like to me, 100% all in, not really like, you burn the ships. You're not like thinking about like, I was committed to succeeding in wholesaling, like
Okay.
100%. Like I was going to succeed in wholesaling, do whatever I had to, or die trying. I was not that way with my marriage. I am that way now with my commitment to my, self
Yourself.
development. Yeah,
Yeah.
to myself. Yep.
Right. And how does one get to that? Right? How does one like is this just something you wake up and you like
It was like
choose?
it yeah, like, to be honest, like, my ex deciding to leave, doing a lot of self-reflecting, just kind of realizing like, hey, thought a lot of the issues were probably more on her, and then, like, reflecting, it's like, hey, you have issues in your marriage because of a lot of stuff that you kind of held on to from when you were a kid. If you're not 100% committed to the marriage, it's probably not going to work. And that applies to whatever, right? Like, if you're not 100% committed to succeeding in real estate, or whatever it is that you're going after, it's probably not going to work.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So on a daily basis, you would just figure out ways to make things work, but in your marriage, you didn't. And so if you applied that, maybe it would have worked. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that's how you
Yeah,
gain
like,
success.
like, if I was more consistent and disciplined, like, if I would have made the changes I've made in the last few months, like, I probably would not be getting a divorce.
Got it. All right. You talked about just now dealing with things from your childhood. What kind of things did you deal with or not deal with from your childhood?
Just like a lot of trust and like abandonment issues, just from, like, situations that I've encountered, with my mom and dad.
Yeah. What kind of situations that really affected you most?
I would say just really not really feeling, that I could fully trust and depend on them, and it was just because they were going through like a lot of stuff and on their own. But it was like, they were kind of probably more concerned and worried about each other, at times, than they were about us. And there was just, a lot of violence that I saw, drugs around us.
Mm,
Just not a real typical upbringing. And quite frankly, I didn't even realize that until I got older, right? Like, it's normal when you're kind of a kid and going through it. And then you realize, you talk to other people and it's like, holy shit, like that
right.
stuff's not like actually like too normal.
Right. It reminds me of a story where a kid was sitting and watching the news, and the news said in this poor area of the city, and that's just the area he lived in. He was like, "Are
Yeah,
we
I didn't know.
poor?"
I didn't know I was poor until I was probably in like fifth or sixth grade. Like, we
Right.
used to have to, at the end of the month, like, we had food stamps at the end of the month. We rarely didn't have food. We'd have to get help from like churches. We used to have to heat our house at times with the oven. We've gotten our bills cut off and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, we lived in like a nicer section of the city. Um, because my dad did make, decent money, but he just used it a lot, to do heroin. And we also, like, my mom and dad were kind of responsible for maintaining like a smaller apartment building that we like lived in. So it was like, and six of us lived in like a two-bedroom apartment. I always kind of felt like out of place. Like, it was like, it felt like we didn't belong in the area that we lived in,
Got
because
it.
most of the other people like in the area like didn't live the way that we did.
Right. How would you describe your relationship with your father?
Oh, it's great now. Like, it was, it definitely took a lot of time to kind of get where we're at. And, just even having some conversations with him, recently, just about like some impact he had on me in a negative way as a kid, like, I think helped us a lot. But I'm super proud of my dad. Like, he did what he could, when he was going through his shit, but he had a tough life. He was a Marine, Vietnam vet, did heroin for like fucking 30 plus years and had a crazy life. And, he now has 20 plus years clean. And I'm super proud of him for it. He's going to be at my youngest daughter's birthday party on Wednesday night. Um, he's down at my house a couple weeks ago, and whenever he honestly comes down and visits, because he lives about an hour or so away from like me and my sisters, so he'll usually stay at my house. So, we didn't have a real good relationship for the first 20 years of my life. It has gotten significantly better like the last 20.
Wow. Okay. So it kind of sounds like you went through the transition of that they said there's three phases of a relationship with a parent. First you idolize them, then you villainize them, and then finally you humanize them.
Yep.
And you were able to see that when he was being a father to you, like for the first 20 years, like you were mentioning, he was just doing the best he could with what he had.
Yeah.
There's no handbook on how to be a great dad. And if you don't have resources, if you don't have all the things you need to be the best, whatever that may be, then you got what you got, right? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And just to me, I guess, like, when I was, young and growing up, you know, when he's a heroin addict, you think like, damn, like why the fuck is he picking like a drug like over me? Like what did I do that he makes that choice? Which is difficult to kind of deal with when you're younger. But then actually as I kind of, got involved in doing drugs and, went through my shit, I realized like, damn, like it wasn't like he's making a conscious choice where it's like, oh, I'm gonna pick heroin today, like over Frank. Like, no, it's just it just, drugs like, can get a hold of you. Um and
It
a lot of people don't get through it.
it like steals your soul
Yeah.
almost, right? And it's not a personal thing against you, right? Your dad didn't
No, no.
didn't actively choose like, okay, drugs are Frank, drugs are Frank. It
But as a kid and
yeah,
growing up, you think that, right? Because
yeah.
it's like you don't know what you don't know. Like,
Hmm.
so like I really kind of had some resentment towards him for like a while because I feel like, couldn't trust him, like, kind of felt like he abandoned us and stuff.
Yeah.
And was making a conscious choice about this stuff. But again, in reality, it's like, a heroin addict, an alcoholic, like it's not a conscious choice at times. Like shit, even like with the marriage, like the last few years, my ex or whatever would say, like, hey, look, I can't continue to do this. It's me or the alcohol. And she didn't get it, but it was like, I can't just stop because you're telling me to.
Mm, yeah. Wow. So you made up with him. He was the villain in your story for a very long time. And for a lot of our listeners, their parents are still the villain. How did you cross that bridge and say, "Hey, Pop, I get
Well,
it."
again, it was really just kind of me going through my shit. Like he got clean, I want to say, when I was like 18, which is around the time that I got clean. I did good for a few years and started fucking up. But once I kind of got past my stuff, I had my son, like you said, like it's kind of funny, like the humanizing part. I realized, like, hey, like it wasn't personal. Like I got it that it wasn't a conscious choice. And I also realized, like, shit, like, even though like my life growing up like wasn't necessarily like the best or easiest, like his fucking shit was like even like more difficult and harder than mine. So like again, just humanizing it and not really trying to, taking it so personal, like he did this to hurt me. And it's like almost like, you kind of do feel that way sometimes, like when you're a kid and kind of growing up, like, this hurt that you get from your parent, you know, they're doing it intentionally. But in reality, it's like a lot of the times they don't even see that they're doing it.
Wow. Yeah. So what's great is it's like you were almost playing the victim card for a while,
100%.
for a long time,
100%.
and then you got some.
Well, this when I had my son was kind of like I realized because like again, like in particular when I was fucked up on drugs and in high school and shit, like god damn, like why the fuck did I have to have like my dad like have to be a heroin addict and we're are on welfare and just like all the shit that I had experienced, like that self-limiting negative talk all the time. And then when I had my like son, like I just realized like, man, I want to change my life. Like it was just like a switch where it was like, listen, like all of that shit is true. It is what it is. If you want your fucking life to be better, you need to do something about it. And that's kind of when I stopped having a victim mentality.
Got it. Wow.
But
So
I had a huge victim mentality like up until I probably had my son.
right, right. So that becoming a father, having your son, that gave you this like moment of clarity where you could see your dad with you and go, "Wow, this is tough."
Yeah.
And I understand, I humanize, I
Yeah.
understand why you were the way you were. And even with the drug thing, because you were on drugs, you understood what he went through, how his soul was taken from by the drugs, and why he couldn't actively choose his family, even though from a logical standpoint, it's like, oh, duh, but you can't do it, right? You're not there.
No,
You're not
somebody is a totally different person. Like when they're like, on drugs, like, they're an alcoholic, whatever, whatever your vice is, like you're just a different person. Like, cause that thing, has more control of you than you have of it.
right. Wow. So it was not that it was good that you took drugs, but
No, listen, there's nothing in life I regret. Like
oh, that's good.
I honestly am, to me, I'm at a good place. I'm happy with who I am. And like, if every single thing in my life did not happen up until right at this moment when we're talking right now, I would be a different person.
You
And
would
I don't
be.
want to be any different or anywhere than I am right now. I'm good with where I am and who I am.
That's fantastic. Because it's like some people say like success is like having $1 million or something like that, right? I think like success
Just
is,
being at peace.
yeah, right. It's not, it's one thing what you have, and what you have is who you are and everything that it is.
Yeah,
To
it's funny because just like again, this is kind of something I learned from my mentor, like Wes. But like a lot of times in life, I would be so focused on like an end result. Like I
yes,
would tie my self worth to my bank account.
right. It's your self
Like
worth to your net worth.
yeah, and it's like like I've realized in terms to get to a different like level of where I wanted to go, like the last few years, I had to do something different. Well, I didn't have to do something different. I had to become someone different. It was a who, not a how. I know how to do all the shit, but I wasn't focused enough on becoming like the who. Am I becoming the type of person that deserves everything I want and desire? Um, and the answer to that question too often, I would say, was no. Because I was, again, not focused on just trying to consistently get better every day, but just always tied to some outcome.
Yeah. So you had to change your own self image of who you were in order to achieve the things that you wanted. You needed to be that different person. So you needed to change that first and foremost,
Yeah,
which was to accept you and own your story and everything that happened,
yeah,
from the drugs, from the alcohol to the divorce to this to that, and you name it, whatever.
the
That
ups and downs of business.
that resume, it's like, man, this is not good, right? But you own it and you're like, dude, I wouldn't change any of it,
Well,
right? And that's powerful. When you can love yourself and accept yourself for all that you are and all that you aren't.
yeah.
Because everybody, Frank ain't, no, I'm kidding.
Fuck
No.
you, Hoan.
No, this is
I
good.
might need a new co-host soon.
Interviewing
after
for,
after half of the first episode.
right, right. Let's transition to your relationship with your mom. Different relationship than your dad, obviously, right?
Yeah, and it
Mm.
was my entire life. Like my mom has been like my biggest supporter ever. Like she's probably the reason that my head is as big as it is. And I don't mean that in a literal sense, people, figuratively.
Right,
But like
right. Well,
she
you've been losing weight, but your head didn't
yeah, I
shrink.
still got a big ass head. Uh, but I have a big brain, so it would look even weirder if my head was small. So
Right, right.
but like no, my mom, like I love her to death. Like other than my kids, like I love her more than like anyone else in the world. She's been my biggest supporter, and she's literally probably the reason I'm so confident because she always would tell me how good I was, even when I wasn't.
Got it. Got it.
and
Wow.
she literally stuck by like me when she shouldn't have.
In like what?
Just going through the drug shit.
So you're going through it. You're probably a complete asshole, and she's still
Oh yeah, like I was cold hearted.
what? Like how?
Well, I'm saying she would like beg me to stop. And I would say to her, I'm like, this doesn't fucking bother you. Like I'm doing this. What I do with my life has no impact on you.
But I can tell that you realized that it did have a huge impact on her, and that you hurt her a lot when you were going through your phase,
Yeah, I couldn't imagine like one of my kids being how I was.
right? Have you spoken to your mom about these situations?
Yeah, yeah,
About
no. Like
you've made
I'm
amends?
pretty confident she knows how I feel about her. And no, like we've talked like the good and the bad. Like, I've definitely although I've had some trust issues with my mom, or from my mom, I should say, but like the good and the bad, like we've talked about, and we have a really good relationship, and me and her honestly have not really like there was like one point in my life she did something that like for a few days like I was like fuck, but um for the most part we've always had a very very close relationship.
Right, right. So even though she threw it back at you in her own way, like she, made you feel terrible, the way you were making her feel terrible, you were able to forgive that
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah, like, when I was selling drugs, like, in my early 20s, like, selling coke and had a pretty vicious, like, perk habit. I couldn't put the money in the bank, so
No?
no, no, they don't like to hold drug money.
Okay, alright.
So, I would give my mom my money, like, to hold the money.
Right, Bank of Mom.
Yep. She put it in the top of the closet, and, I kinda had, like, a big scare and almost got caught up and went to prison. So, I was figured it was time to cash out while I was ahead, and I went to her one day to kinda get some like, the money that she was holding, which is about 20 grand, but, like, back in, like, 2003, like, that was a fucking
Everything.
yeah, everything to me, and I was just like, "Fuck, that money's gone." I'm like, "Ma," I said, "What's up? I need that money." I'm gonna go get it tomorrow. Okay, I didn't get a chance to go today. The third day, my sister Nikki calls me, and I was like, "It's gone, ain't it?" And I was like, I think that they just thought it was just the money, but it wasn't the money at all. Like one, it was like my mom was like the person I trust, like probably the only person I could trust at the time. So it was like,
Right,
fuck, now I really can't trust anybody.
right.
And then not only that, like it was just everything to me in the sense where it was like I literally risked my freedom to get this money. I just fucking kicked an unkickable perk habit,
Yeah,
and it was my way out. Like that was, and it was just like again everything at the time. It wasn't just the money,
right, right.
and it was like I knew how much it crushed her, like the situation. So I just kind of had to get over it in a few days. Like I didn't talk to her like for probably like literally like 2 days or whatever. But like I called her, I'm like, whatever, it's cool. I said it's just money, and I'll get more money.
That's good because it is just money, but your
I
relationship.
wasn't feeling, I wasn't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
feeling
yeah,
that at the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
but it was just,
You're
but
lying to
no, but
yourself.
at the end of the day, like that's kind of, it's funny that like I always still feel that way. It's just money, and I can always make more money.
Yeah, and hey, you've proved it to be true. There are people listening to this who are having a money situation right now, and they might have a money situation with someone they actually care about, just like you and your mom, but they haven't gotten past it. Again, this podcast is for all of the people listening who are going through all of these different issues silently. You're giving them that voice. That's why this podcast is really powerful. You're giving them that voice. You're giving them that framework to go, wow, Frank does get it. And this is something really powerful. You are uniquely qualified to help people, right? It's one thing for somebody who is sitting on the top of the mountain to be like, yo, guys, just get your shit together, right? It's another to be like, guys, do you see where I came from?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, I get it. I get it. And that allows you to humanize a lot of different things. Like your father, again, I don't know if you would have been able to humanize him as much if you didn't have a drug thing
Yeah,
yourself.
I sincerely don't believe like I could have, because it was just like it was like relatable, right? Like
Yeah.
I never, understood like, as a kid. And so I like got it into my own shit, like where it was like, God damn, like how could he like choose this over
Right.
us?
Right.
But then it was like shit, like even like when I was like real fucked up on perks and selling coke, like this is just how you know crazy and people's mindsets are. But like I would take my son with me when he was like 2. I'm running around selling drugs high on perks, because I'm like, well, if I got a kid with me, like they ain't gonna think I'm fucking running around
Right.
selling drugs.
Right.
Like, but like now, like, and don't get me wrong, I've thought this for many many years now, but it was like, Jesus fucking Christ, like what were you thinking, like
Right.
putting your son at like such a risk? But in my mind at the time, like it made sense.
No, it's a perfect cover.
Yeah, like
It
seriously.
wasn't risk. It was the opposite of risk. You were de-risking the situation with him.
In my mind, that made sense.
It makes sense, right? Um, there's something very interesting that you were doing. You asked a question like, "How could my dad pick the drugs over us?" And then, well, I don't know what answer you got, but that question has this like effect on you. And they often say, "Ask better questions, you get better answers." Right? So, what do you think a better question could have been if you had all of the awareness of today and then you were able to flash back to back when you asked that initial question, how could my dad choose drugs over us? What would a better question have been?
I don't know if I would say a better question, but I like if I could just talk to the, 6, 7-year old me, I would just say that, like, it's not your fault and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, right,
Because, a lot of people, have to experience that stuff. And maybe you had to deal with like a drug addict or an alcoholic parent and you didn't kind of go through it. So you don't get it. And you think like, oh, maybe it's something you did or there's something you could have done.
right,
Trust me, there's nothing you did, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing that you can do to prevent someone from stopping something that does not want to stop. I
right,
know that first, second, and third hand.
right. A lot of times I go through life and I have to remind myself it's not personal. I literally say that to myself when something happens from somebody by somebody
Yeah,
else.
yeah, and honestly, again, that's like something to me I've been realizing more and more, even just like lately, where it's like, when somebody's like very like reactionary, defensive, or something, or negative towards you, it's generally more of a reflection of how they're kind of feeling about themselves,
Right,
and we shouldn't take it personal because in reality, it's just more of again how they're feeling about themselves that you triggered something in them.
right. So, like, back to my thing with the question, it's like if you were a wise, like all knowing wise 6 or 7 year old, not how come daddy's choosing drugs over us? It's what is daddy going through?
Yeah,
How does daddy feel?
yeah,
What's bothering him? That, that's the kind of thing. And so sometimes how I see people react is out of line with their genuine nature, but like when somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? All of a sudden the middle fingers, the
yeah,
cursing, the everything, this is where it's not personal. The person who cut me off may not have even realized I was there, right? It's that unpersonal that I'm not even in the picture. And they go,
yep.
oh my God, there was a car there? Like, that's how unpersonal it is. The realization that I wasn't even in the
Yeah, you
room.
weren't even, we think like, oh, this person just tried to wrong me. This person, we weren't even on this person's radar. Like we
No.
didn't cross, like we weren't in their thought process.
Right. Right. And then I often say to myself, like, oh, I wonder how many times I've done that. Right? This humanizing part, this like, yo, humans make mistakes. Humans do
Yeah.
things.
We,
I'm a
we, we
human.
are perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, yeah, we're full of imperfections, full of them, right? And so we're doing these things to others as well. We think everybody else is wronging us. We're the victim. Guys, look at my life. Like it's all their fault. How are we affecting other people? How are you affecting your wife? How is she feeling in the relationship? How are you affecting your kids?
Yeah.
How are
Like
you affecting
even
everybody?
like that's a great like point because like, you know, what you're in essence saying is two people can experience the same situation but have two completely different perspectives about like that situation. And it's like almost like that's probably was, how my marriage was to a certain extent. Cause I don't think she was thinking like it's like horrible, bad, but it was probably better in my perspective than it was in her perspective because of how she is as a person to me and compared to how I am as a person to her.
Yeah. Where else is that happening? Business relationships, friendships, parenting, whatever. How are we showing up?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody is pretty self-centered. Like when we take a group picture, first person you look for is yourself. How do I look? Right? When you look messed
I'm not asking how Hoan looks in the
right,
picture.
you're not, right? And if the picture's bad, if you're looking bad in the picture, it's like
Oh,
redo.
let's take another one.
Let's do another one.
Everyone else looked great, but
Everyone's
I
perfect. You blinked, right? It's like
got my bad side.
yeah, it's all your sides. But no, it's crazy that we don't realize that we are that for other people when everybody else is in their self-centered universe, which we all are, right? When we're in that self-centered universe, we are the people that are affecting them. We are causing them to be the victim if their brain so chooses for that to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, when it comes to this podcast and helping people move further along, what do you see in the world? What are you encountering that really caused you to want to create this podcast? What do you see that you're like, dude, I get it?
Well, just about like, mindset, right? Like, I was never taught any, like, I got an associate's degree from CCP, Community College of Philadelphia, I never learned about mindset in elementary school, middle school, high school, or college.
Yeah.
Um, my mom and dad never taught me about mindset. So, like, to me, it's like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I stumbled upon mindset, law of attraction from having a conversation with somebody I was doing business with. But you know, truly believe that if you can change your mind, you can change your life. And too often, the majority of people, have self-limiting beliefs, negative self-talk. You just don't believe. When we're kids, we think anything is possible, and then like we start like growing up, and like adults put their bullshit and self-limiting beliefs on us, and then we start living in fear and in scarcity, and just thinking like this is what my life's supposed to be, and I don't have any control of it. And in reality, if you think that's true, you're right. And if you think, hey, if I have the right mindset, I take the necessary actions, I can do whatever the fuck I want in my life. If you have that mindset, that is true as well.
Right.
So it's just, to me, just about like educating people through, life experiences of myself and other people, where you can come from nothing and go wherever you want. You can live in dark for a very long time and come to the light and not think in that negativity and scarcity mindset so much.
Right. Right. So where you came from has no bearing necessarily on where you get to go in the future.
No,
Like
no.
that, like it's wide open.
Yeah, like to me, like your mind is the only thing that will hold you back.
Yeah.
Whatever I forget who the fuck it was, but like, whatever you believe, you can achieve.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, like what I want to share so much, like with the podcast and the people we'll be interviewing.
Yeah, yeah. I was listening to an interview where the guy was talking about his upbringing and how when he was a teen or young adult or whatever, it was like he was getting in trouble all the time, and somebody was like, "You have no future." And I was thinking to myself, that's all he has.
Yeah.
All he has is the future. He can become whoever he wants just because he's messing up right now.
Yeah, and the crazy, that to that point, like this story I shared with you, just about like me like wanting to end it, like prior to finding out my I was going to have a son, like when I was 17 years old, like I in my mind I fucked so much up, like that I wasn't going to be able to overcome it. Like it was
Right,
like, not even worth it to try anymore, because it was just like the stuff that I did, how I grew up, like nothing was going to get better.
right. It's not that there's like entrepreneurship's better than 9 to 5, whatever, right? But when it comes to entrepreneurs, when I meet them, I notice that every 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they're doing something different. They're like, "Oh, I started doing this, and now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this." Like, their life is full of change. And because their lives are so full of change, they have this almost optimistic viewpoint that, well, if things aren't going well, I'll just pivot,
Yeah.
right? In business, it's called pivoting. At a 9 to 5, people just like they go to school, they go to work, they get a job, right? And then they stay there and nothing changes. And so if things are going bad in their life, they don't have the evidence to start moving this flywheel of like, oh, I can change something. And then when I change something, things get better. And then I have better thoughts and then I can make better change and have this flywheel going. They just go, life sucks. See, I
Yeah.
told you life sucks. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
sucks. And it just, that's the flywheel. And nothing in their environment has any evidence that things can get better. So this idea of like when you're young and you're messing up and you've destroyed everything in your life and you've ruined every friendship, every relationship, everything that like you can get better, like that doesn't exist because if you don't have that frame of reference, if you don't have all of this evidence,
Yeah.
it's hard to see that. So that's where people get into this despair,
Yeah.
this
No,
victim
100%.
mentality. So
Yeah, because if you don't like see somebody, right, like it's if you don't know someone personally, like that has that, like that was able to change your life,
right,
like it's not possible.
right. And even if they do though, even if they do see that person, they're like,
Yeah, if it and it's like one person, you're like, like that's they got
yeah,
lucky, they must have screwed somebody over,
right, right.
something like that. It's not like, oh, they actually like had a positive mindset. They, they didn't give up. They worked really hard, which is kind of how the majority of people actually succeed in life.
Right. Right. There's so many people that will say things to me like, "Oh, you just don't understand, Hone. You don't understand my situation. Oh, I have kids. Oh, I have this. I have that. I can't do that. I can't improve this. I can Yeah, I want to, of course, but I can't." And I just think to myself, no matter who you are, I will show you somebody who had a worse upbringing
Exactly.
by 10 times, 100 times, and made it.
And that's the thing, right? It's like people focus on like, well, hey, you, like who I'm talking to, you don't understand. Well, why are you seeking out the person that doesn't understand, your situation, as opposed to you actually seeking out someone that, just like you said, has been through way worse than you and has succeeded. Like use that as motivation, not like, the bullshit excuses that you tell yourself all the time.
Right, it's yeah, so the flywheel, this positivity flywheel, it also goes the other way, like
Well, yeah, like
negatively flywheel.
the law of attraction, it's goes both ways. Like whatever you put out, like you attract. So if that's positive, you put out positivity, you're going to get the positivity. But it worked with the negativity. Like I said, like it literally when when early in my real estate career, the first whatever 2 to 3 years, like deals fell apart at the table more. And I'm telling you, like from a volume, like I've done over 600 real estate transactions in my career. So in the first 3 years, like it was like way less than 100, but more deals fell apart at the settlement table in those deals than the next, 550 or whatever.
Right.
What was the only difference? My mindset. That was it.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't anticipating it. Like when you're kind of, and again, it sounds like if somebody would have told me about this shit like, 10, 12 years ago about the law of attraction, I'm like, yeah, that's hocus pocus. Like, but like, no, it's like, it's real. And I'm not saying that you can like, if I wanted to lose the 20 pounds that I've lost, right? Like I did believe it, put it out, but then I put the work behind it. So like there's work behind the law of attraction,
Right.
but it's like, you can't just like put out like positive thoughts and eat donuts and sit on the couch and lose 50 pounds. But it's like if you have that, if you have a desire, belief, and action, you can get whatever you want.
I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna eat the donuts, and I'm gonna no.
Okay. I would like to see that.
I'm kidding. I'm gluten intolerant. I can't even eat the donuts. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Here's the other cool thing, like who you were 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, you were already clean and you were already in business and all that kind of stuff, right? Who you were 10 years ago versus who you are today, like in terms of your knowledge and your wisdom and all that, like completely different, drastically different, right? Can you imagine who you will be in 10 years from now?
Yeah, like,
Right.
and it's funny too because I always like, and like I knew this internally, but I didn't verbalize it until I stopped drinking, obviously. But like, I think to myself, it's like, God damn, like you've done pretty well for yourself, and you were, an alcoholic, and you've
Right.
had gambling problems like
Yeah.
on and off for out the last decade. So it's like, no, it's the next 10 years. I'm really excited.
Yeah, yeah. Our mutual friend Joe Evangelisti, he recently did a training that I was on, and he was talking about like think about who you were 10 years ago and who you are today, and then think about like what you can accomplish 10 years from now based on what you learned in the next 10 years. And so that goes to anybody listening to this podcast, which is this is just a seed that you're planting into their head. You drugs, gambling, alcohol, divorce.
And we haven't even touched on the business ups and downs.
Yeah, that's I think we intentionally said that this wouldn't be a business
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
podcast. This would be a mindset podcast, even though we're gonna have a lot of business owners on this podcast, but we're gonna really dig into their
Uh-huh.
mindset and how they were able to
Yeah,
accomplish
yeah, no, but
things.
I'm
Yeah.
the point of me even saying that is just like, just like I've been in business for over a decade, and trust me, like that's not easy. So I've dealt with a lot of ups and downs and struggles in business as well, in addition to all of the personal shit.
Yeah. So, guys, if you're listening to this and you're saying I can't because just listen to Frank's story. If he can do it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh
It's
man.
funny because like I was just kind of like talking to different people that are going to be like, guests of ours, and we're kind of just sharing stories. And after I like shared my story with most people, they were like, "Oh, holy shit!"
You win.
Like, yeah. It's like I didn't even go into detail about too much stuff either.
Right, right. That if they only knew, right? If they only knew.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so let's do this. We're for the guests listening, we're trying these out. We have these 4 questions that we like to wrap it up with. So, Frank, first question. What book, movie, or experience fundamentally changed your perspective on life and why? What book, movie, or experience, could be your experience, fundamentally changed your life and why?
I would honestly just say like the most recent one just being like my wife like leaving. It was just, that experience was like a wake up call for me and just made me kind of realize some stuff about myself. In terms of consistency, discipline, that has kind of like led me on the path that I'm on now. And, it's literally, I feel amazing. Like I feel better than I ever had before. And I think the next time I'll feel even better is when I'm 41. But it was just, and I guess like why did that happen? Because, when you feel like you're losing something that you like really wanted, it just made me like reflect and why is this happening? What did I do or not do to kind of get to this point? And, what do I need to do to kind of become and get the life that I want? And, from that experience, like I said, it's like led me on the path that I'm on. And I feel like I'm on a pretty clear path right now.
Wow. Some people would think like a divorce would be the end, but
Yeah,
for
and don't get
you,
me
it's
wrong,
like
like
a
it was
new,
like, for the first fucking few days or whatever, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, it's like, wow, God, why do you gotta always kick me in the nuts? Like, but then, again, like, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. So
yeah,
I spend a lot of alone time just like reflecting, talking to other people, getting different perspectives, having conversations, and just, again, just a lot of self realization. And it's crazy because I was fucking, again, it's a painful experience, but I'm truly grateful for her leaving because I would not have, come to these realizations at this point in my life. And I'm really glad that I have.
yeah. I was following you on social media. Yeah, God kicked you in the nuts for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Anyway, question two. How do you define success?
being at peace and having freedom. I would say freedom for a while, like I had, like, having, enough money to kind of do stuff, but like peace, I definitely wouldn't say that I had that. So I would say it's a combination of peace and freedom
Wow.
for me personally.
Yeah. How much money do you need to have peace?
Not as much as you would think. Like it depends. Like that's like
Yeah.
it depends on one's lifestyle. Like that could be some people that's 100,000 a year. Some people it's 1 million a year.
I just wanted to inject a little business into it. Um, if you could have a conversation with any historical figure, who would it be with, and what would you want to ask them?
I thought about this one. So I think it's like really like two people. And I can do that because I'm a host.
Okay, fine.
Martin Luther King and
Okay.
John F. Kennedy,
Okay.
because they to me were just super important historical figures that like seem to have a similar vision and outlook. And I just would ask them, how do they feel about how things are going right now?
How do you think they would respond?
Not too. I don't think that they would be too happy, like because I feel like there's a lot of divisiveness that is created unnecessarily.
There has been quite a bit. Okay, that's good. All right, final question. What was a time you had self-limiting beliefs, and what did you do to overcome them? I know we talked a lot about them, but if you could pick, what was a time you have a self-limiting
I'll
belief?
say something that's kind of more recently and just kind of more recently kind of coming to the realization, but like for, again, and this is kind of that negativity mindset I had with a marriage, but like there was part of me that didn't feel I deserved to have a great family life and a great business life. Like it was almost like I had to choose between one or the other. Um,
Mm.
and again, like now I just realize it was only true because I made it true in my mind.
Why did you do that?
That's a good fucking question.
I know.
Um, like probably just from like lack of like self worth and not feeling like enough, and just like self limiting beliefs,
And this
and
was
just
recent? This was
yeah. Like
and
I honestly like struggled with that. Like and this is fucked up. I know that I said this, but like I have even like said, because I like had that present in the mind, like within like the last 6 months to my soon to be ex, like where it was like, hey, if I have to choose between us and what want to do with business, like I'm choosing the business.
interesting. Wow.
But it was just like, the negativity, scarcity, fear.
Yeah. Wow. So even with all of the wisdom you have, you still carried that
Yeah, like I
with
said,
you.
like the marriage part for some reason, well, not for some reason, but like I guess like I always felt that like, my wife could, hurt me in ways that like no one else in the world could. So that just always stuck with me. Like I would focus more on the potential pain that she could cause me than the happiness and joy that she was causing me.
Right, right.
So
Well,
that kind of like
it's
led to that.
true. It's true she could because you let her in, right?
Yeah.
It's true. The vulnerability leaves you vulnerable, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And there's no reason to focus on that
Yeah. No,
because what
it's
you focus on becomes true.
or at least what you focus on creates a paranoia that destroys your life anyway. And so, yeah. Wow. Frank. This
But
is
now I realize more so than ever that, it doesn't have to like pick and choose. So I
yeah,
feel like, that's why like I feel like I'm more excited about life than like ever because like I feel like I'm gonna have it all.
you can have it all. That's a great way to end the first episode of this amazing podcast that's going to change millions of lives, Frank.
That is the plan, my friend.
All right. So, how do you feel? How'd it go?
Good. I feel great. Hopefully the listeners got a lot of value out of this. Please share as much as possible. Give us some feedback as well.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys, if you do share this, just think you may be positively affecting somebody you've never met who then has a better day. And then when you have an interaction with them, it turns out to be a much better experience than otherwise. Right. And so we can help person by person by person. Eventually, we live in a world that's not so divisive. And if you were to ask Martin Luther King, hey, what do you think? Well, because of Frank's podcast,
We're a little bit better off.
we're a little better off. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you guys for watching
Thanks a
or
lot.
listening. All right, I'm Hoan. This is Frank McGovern. Fuck it. See you guys.
Have a good one.